Car ownership is now out of reach and people are crying for help. Good morning, my savory seeds of sunshine, and today we're going to talk about the simple fact that while a lot of people are averaging their car payments at $730 a month, 10%, 15% of the population buying vehicles today are paying over $1,000 a month just for their car payment. I've looked around car lots lately and found pickup trucks for $190,000 for a Shelby F-150, for garden variety mid-level pickup truck at $90,000 Canadian funds, and even a small diminutive SUV like a Ford Escape is now costing you $40,000 to $50,000. The sheer cost is prohibitive. People can't afford to live, they can't afford to buy these cars, and therefore they've pretty much given up the ghost, making decisions to make cheaper alternatives. Whether it's riding the bike, the bus, carpooling, we're going to share some tips and how some strategies that people are taking because the affordability crisis is real and they just can't afford to own their car anymore. So we're going to talk about breaking this down, what some people are paying, the average monthly income that the American household is making versus what it's actually costing to own and operating a vehicle, from the purchase price to gas and insurance, as well as maintenance and upkeep. We want to talk about all those factors because they're real. And when all of a sudden the dealer hands you this bill for $1,200 for this repair, you've got to come up with that money. So these are hard, cold facts we want to talk about. And again, the cost of living crisis is real and people are starting to feel this in a negative way. So let's drill right in. Just going by the law of averages, the average new car purchase price has an average monthly payment of about $738. That's right, most people are rooked in on average. Sure, there's cheaper cars, there's more expensive cars, and we've spoken. Many people are now stuck paying over $1,000 a month. $738 is the average monthly payment for a new vehicle, while a used vehicle monthly payments are closer to that $532 place. And while some people in their minds are thinking, hey, that's all it takes. Hey, I can afford $700 a month. I can afford $1,000 a month. I can afford $500 a month. But really, can you? Because that's not where car ownership costs end. We have to consider factors, not just the car payment, the interest charges, depreciation of the vehicle, which everybody seems to forget about, as well as fuel costs and maintenance and service fees. So let's crunch some numbers, shall we? For the average vehicle that's driven about 15,000 miles a year, which is quite significant. That's somebody using it every day, probably doing weekend trips, but it definitely is consistent with what a lot of people are using their vehicles for. And we have to consider, according to AAA, back in 2023, the average consumer was spending about $1,015 a month or about $12,000 a year. So based on AAA's analysis, early 2023 saw people spending an average about $15.93 per mile for regular gas, and based on that 15,000 mile range that we spoke of, the average seems to be about $2,400 US dollars to move that vehicle down the road. That price goes up if you're talking Canadian funds, and as well if you're increasing your mileage or you have a vehicle that's a heavier gas guzzler, some of the bigger V8s, those numbers are going to go up. This is merely the average, $2,400 a year just for fuel. Now, another number that's somewhat variable is maintenance repairs. While owning a brand new vehicle takes a lot of the unexpected repairs out of the equation, simple servicing is still required. You have to do your oil changes, tire rotations are factors that you're going to do on a brand new vehicle. And the average is about $123 US a month. But on top of that, you've got to think the variable comes in if you're buying a used vehicle. While you're saving money on the front end and the monthly payments, your monthly or annual servicing costs might go up because now you have a vehicle outside of warranty, unexpected repairs, and especially if you're driving an older used luxury vehicle like a BMW or an Audi, you're really going to see escalating costs. So these numbers are quite variable, but even at $123, that's skimming the surface for the basics. Now, according to AAA, in 2023, $760 was also consumed to pay for things like registration and taxes, state, which is somewhat variable depending if you pay provincial, government, state taxes, you name it. There are other costs, administrative costs associated with owning that vehicle. Insurance also, according to AAA, is an average of $1,765 per year. If you're driving a mediocre vehicle, drive a car like a Camry or Honda Accord, you're probably going to see average rates. Drive a car like an F7 Series BMW, you're going to see those rates a lot higher. So that is a very average, but that's what you could expect. Another factor, what a lot of people don't really necessarily incorporate, and it doesn't hit as hard on the first vehicle that you buy, but as time goes on, depreciation kicks you in the rear end because for the next vehicle that you may buy or rent or lease or whatever, it ends up costing you because now that buying power is diminished. The value of retention in that vehicle is gone. You no longer have that money, that hard-earned after-tax earnings. So depreciation is a real factor. And about 15 to 20% on your first year is what you would anticipate on a new car's depreciation, and approximately 12 to 15% depreciation every year after that. So let's talk about the total monthly car cost estimator based on statistics that we've pulled from Experian and AAA. So we pulled $738 a month for your new car purchase, $147 a month for insurance, $199 for gas, $123 per month for maintenance, and $64 for registration and other miscellaneous administrative fees, takes you to a grand total of about $1,271. Now remember, this is the blended average. We won't even take into account any big faults. If you have a used vehicle and all of a sudden you have a new set of tires and you got to throw another $2,500 at it, or all of a sudden you blow an engine because it's an older Dodge, and all of a sudden you've got to find yourself putting in $6,000. Or you find yourself with a Ford and it blows a set of turbos and you've got to put in another $6,000. All these costs sometimes are unexpected and you have to budget for that. But this is just the average. So because we speak of the blended averages, if you keep your vehicle for an extended period of time, the law of averages means that you're going to see some bigger expenses. Again, tires, batteries, brakes, and even other consumables means we're going to drive those prices up. We also can't help forget about the influxes and changes in fuel prices, so I always like to add a little buffer. I run another K factor, and that $12,000 to me looks more like about $15,252 based on my calculations. Then we have to consider what your total household medium income is. Well, the average household, we're talking in that $70,000 to $75,000 based on 2023 stats in the United States of America, means that after taxes, you're only going to see about $50,000 of available funds to spend on your vehicle. And so when we do this rough calculation of 15 grand out of your after-tax earnings of 50 and change, the cost of owning that vehicle is up close to 30%. My calculations were at 28 to 30% of your growth of your net income, meaning that most people have grossly exceeded what they can truly afford for that new vehicle. And while $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 extra to pay for that beautiful new shiny car might seem like good value and mental health adjustment for yourself, the sad reality is that extra $5,000 that you might be incorporating or infringing on your monthly budget or your annual budget might take away from little Johnny's hockey academy, might take from your daughter's swimming lessons, might take away from that trip to Mexico to take a load off. It might actually cause you more stress and grief in the long run, and it might even make the fact of your weekly trip to the keg for a nice dinner night out might be cut because you don't no longer have the budget. So it's not about not spending on a car, it's about trying to fit it within the confines of affordability. And a lot of people unfortunately have gone beyond that. In 2022, when we saw interest rate hikes go through the roof, banks were overextending people, giving them more money than the value of that vehicle is even worth. Now in 24, we've saw the reverse. We've stabilized with a more traditional depreciation rate, and now people are underwater on their vehicles, stuck paying these high charges, these high rates. And with inflation rates still holding and not going down anytime soon, it just feels like this is a recipe for disaster. With people paying a really sturdy and robust interest charges on their loans, it means people are paying more than they probably should. On top of that, seeing people living under bridges, living in tents, we're seeing this at an alarming rate. I see this in my city. I drive downtown. I don't even have to drive downtown anymore. I go to the outskirts of the city where this once was a never thing, but it's now going on at an alarming rate. People can't afford to even live. They can't afford to pay rent. And now people are even, unfortunately, having to sit roadside in that car that they paid $740 a month for. And they're sitting on the parking lot, Walmart, Costco, some of these parking lots where they can just camp out overnight because they can't afford a roof over their head. A lot of folks can't even afford to fully eat or not eat properly or skimp, go some quick fast food that's going to save them, because remember, quality food ends up costing more. It's a lot more expensive to get proper fruits and vegetables and proper meat. So people a lot of times buy junk food, processed foods. So your health starts to decline. And this is just a never-ending story and saga of sadness when it's easily avoided and just living within the confines. Either buy that older vehicle, buy that cheap vehicle. And unfortunately, if you are in one of these predicaments where you have one of these high cost of interest charge loans, there are some tricks. And I want to share some of those basic essentials so that maybe you can trim down some of those monthly budget costs and then maybe get back to a life of more normality. One way is with your car payment. Look at refinancing. I hate to say that, it's kind of a dirty word. But if you bought in at what the high rates and then we've seen some interest rates go lower again, you might have to look at, you know what, can we refinance at a slightly lower rate? It might even shave $50, $100, maybe $200 a month off my car payment. Any little bit helps. So that's one starting point. Insurance premiums are another one that's constantly on the influx, up and down and up and down. And if there's one thing that I've learned about insurance, you never have a loyalty. They say they respect you. They say they value your business. But do they really? If you sit default and you don't make changes or ask any questions, your rates continue rising. And it always takes that 3 to 4 year time frame where they start to get comfortable that you have to start getting on the phone and calling other insurance companies. And that's what we often do, because that's where we can move to another insurance company. It's a little bit of legwork, but I always like to have a spreadsheet with my vehicles and all the basic data available, including my house insurance. And I have all that stuff summarized so I can literally copy, email it to the next insurance company, minus those costs, of course. And then they can give me an easy quote. Always have that on hand. And that's a way I like to strategize it, because it's always a bit of busy work trying to dig all that information out. So always have that built out, the specs, the level of protection you want on your vehicles, and always shop around for better insurance rates, because you can almost guaranteed every 3 or 4 years, you've got to revisit that and you're sure to get yourself a much better deal. Another place you can save some money is in fuel. I know it's always easiest just to drive down to that mobile station or that Shell station or whatever, because it's close to home. But you know what? Look at those apps. You know, they have Gas Buddy on here you can get on your phone. There's many different applications you can go on your phone, and you can literally find out how much is the cheapest gas in your area. And you can look, and it tells you the address. Don't drive around looking for it, because now you're wasting gas. But if you go on the app, you can actually find often much better deals. So go with that as well. Hey, carpool. Make that choice to possibly carpool with a buddy. I would almost make that a standard procedure, operating procedure, if you will. Because you know what? That's what I've done in the past. I've often buddied up with somebody that lives not far away, or they're on my way, or I'm on their way. And we sort of take turns, and we're able to save a little bit of money. I throw some money his way, he throws some money my way, and we're able to save costs. I've seen this in real practice, and you can save some real money there, and it adds up in the long run. Another option is that quick trip down to 7-Eleven or Max to get yourself a Slurpee or some other beverage. Maybe walk, maybe take your bike. Make that choice. It's a healthy choice. Remember, healthier food, take the walks, take the bike rides. It's going to help be good for your health, as well as it's going to save you some money in the long run. Yeah, sure, you're going to need your vehicle, but make those choices more intelligently. Think about it. Be more deliberate about the choices you're making on when you use your vehicle and how you use it. Before you get yourself into these huge predicaments, you've got to shop around. There's some of the best deals you're going to find in the country right now, how you can help yourself to buy a new or used vehicle and get the best bang for buck. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.